Hello and welcome back to another one of my episodes in the Wales Chronicles that I'm doing right now, staying in a caravan in Wales. As I promised, I will continue doing these chronicles in this place where I am. And I'm introducing myself again. I am still Helena, the world traveler and content creator, and all of these other things that I have talked about. So, if you're new to this channel, then probably you will get used to me, get used to understanding what the content is that I'm doing and how it all goes. So, I'm trying to keep my promise to keep on doing these chronicles, and I know that I'm going to upload them a little bit later, as right now I am living basically without any internet, which has been very, very freeing and very, very interesting time. But anyway, because I will be uploading them a little bit later, so probably I don't need to make a lot of excuses or apologizes for not doing the filming thing as I promised. Because the great news right now is that for a couple of days, for a few days, for maybe 3, 4, or 5 days, I wasn't filming anything. I think it was more like 3 or 4 days. I wasn't filming anything, and this was because I had a lot of work to do. I was working in the garden and with the compost, with helping to make the compost and cleaning out the flower beds and all sorts of other things, all sorts of things that I had to do. So this is the basic fact right now. And another news, as I like to keep this thing updated and, to be honest, just as free flowing as it possibly can be. I always find when I haven't filmed for a while that the thing goes a little bit out of flow. And when it goes out of flow, then I have to remind myself to keep it free flowing. And then I find again that I talk about something that I didn't really plan or think of talking about. But I'm trying to make peace with it. And also with the fact that you there, you are actually very welcome to watch what my life is about. I don't have a lot of things to hide, so I can just be totally and fully open and honest with you. Or as honest as I can be or decide myself to be. So what is the thing that has happened, or the great news is that now my friend Luke, whom I was together with the caravan, he has left now and he has gone to meet his friends in Snowdonia, which means that I am here on my own. And it's a great freedom, because I'm a solitary human being who likes to be alone. So I'm actually welcoming this very, very much. Also, if you don't know who is Luke, then you can go back a few episodes, and this is the place where I had Luke in my channel. He was talking about paganism and his work and other stuff that he is doing. So unfortunately, I didn't have him in other episodes because it just didn't arise really. It didn't come up in this way. It was in different ways. So I wasn't going to pressure that I have to have something happen that didn't want to happen. But it would have been nice and it would have been great, but it just didn't happen, which is also super okay. And I feel like it is a lot about my being and the fact that I actually do like to make my content on my own. But actually, when Luke was in the channel, I also found it very um, gratifying to have another human being talk about themselves. So I hope that it was also enlightening to you that there are other subjects in the planet Earth or in my channel, however I'm doing this thing. So what I've been trying to do today, as I have a free day from work, so I thought I will be doing the filming before it gets totally dark. And when it gets totally dark, then I will probably immerse myself in my creative stuff again. And so what I have been doing right now is I've been trying to gather my spirit back, as I find with my own being is that very often what happens, especially when I'm sharing a space and time with another human being who I have to, take into consideration, then another thing that happens is that I find that my own spirit gets into a state where I start to very much consider another being who I'm together with. And in this way, I find that my own self also is changing. It is changing according to another one. And because I'm used to being on my own, I always have to find that I still find times and places for myself. For example, I wasn't sleeping too well when I was with another human being. And I always like to point out there is nothing to take personally or nothing bad at all, because I highly like humans, but I tend to like them a lot when I'm not together with them all the time. So this is just an aspect that goes with the nature that is, introverted. But when I think about human nature as of like introversion and extroversion, then what I find myself thinking about is that actually we are all introverts inside, and when we find enough charging, then we basically turn into being extroverts, because then we have taken all of these things inside that we actually need, and then we can find ourselves in a state where we want to express these things. And when we are expressing these things, while we don't have a lot of energy, this means that we haven't been spending enough time on our own or with ourselves, and then we are trying to express something that is inside. Then it can be totally difficult to do because we haven't had the time to articulate our thoughts or our ideas or the energy flow or whatever it is, how we call it. And then we can, you know, understand again that in actuality the introversion and extroversion don't exist. Because if you think about it in concepts, then in this place you have the introvert. This is like taking in. This is like the extrovert. This is like the extroversion. And it just goes to this direction. It goes in until this thing just, it takes it in. You can also think about universe, or for example, that this here, this is like a black hole taking everything in. And if you think about all of these, like wise thinkers and wise human beings who like to spend a lot of time on their own and then, make like some studies or come up with some clever scientific thing or writing a book or whatever they're doing, then this is like introversion putting itself into extroversion, and then the extroversion is, you know in their flow, is nicely in their flow, and then it's like putting something out into the world, into the air or space. And if you like to think about it, then we also understand that the introversion thing is, it's not a human really. It's just a thing that takes stuff in, and the thing that is around it and is filtering this thing. This is what creates what it takes inside into content, into wise content. Because a filter always has to, figure out, for example, in your own head, or mind or heart or however you call it, even your body, you're always filtering these things. You're always filtering whatever you're taking in, and then you condition it according to your own being, the way that you want to be, or the way that your primordial or your however you call it again, how your being is making this thing in a way that you yourself like it. And if you yourself like it, for example, if I like what I am doing, then I am finding a lot of acceptance in it, whatever it is that I am doing. And then in this way, I can put it out into the universe. I can put it out as under my credentials and under my name and under my own body, my own being. And this is how I put it out. And for those human beings who like what I specifically do, what is my conditioning about, and my content and my idea flows and all of these other things, then I find out that maybe somebody there is very much agreeing with me or maybe disagreeing and finding that they very much would like to articulate their ideas because they find that they have also good ideas about similar things, and they would like to very much share it. And if their ideas are very superior or even more superior than what I come up with, then it can naturally flow into this place. It's like everywhere in nature, things can flow according to where they are needed, where there is another black hole, like a tension, like a tension. Then if you keep the tension for a long, long time, it starts to vibrate, and then it's sending out a signal that it needs something. Like a human in trouble, it is always saying that it needs something, and then it usually has to be offered in one way or another. So this is another abstract idea that I am having when I start talking about it. Um, and then what happens between these two is like we have one tension point and then we have another tension point, and both of them have this magnificent thing around, this thing called conditioning or filtering. And when you have these two filters, and when they are like getting on very well, then they can create like a big filter. For example, like two human beings who are, for example, scientists, and they're creating a content together. They put their minds together and they create the same content about the same topic. And then when they're doing this together, they can make a magnificent work. And if you have a group of them, then of course you have to condition them into some similar rules so that everybody follows a thing. It's like the same thing that happens in monasteries. In monasteries, people who are, following the same routine and same thing for years, for many, many years, and they have the certain rules to keep the their level of life. And then when they are following the same rules, then they can also very easily and very well work around this thing. Work around this thing. And when they are, you know, working around it, and when they have something that they cannot manage or that they cannot do, and they just go back into these rules where they find that they're really following the same thing, and then they can make peace around these rules. And they even sing these rules, and then they sing them together, and then they harmoniously start to vibrate on the same level, and then they find that again they have this thing inside, when I'm talking about this thing, and then they make the same conditionality around it. But still, what they have is they have their own little conditionality as well, which means that they have their own nature, but it's harmonized through similar faith or belief system, which is actually a super cool thing. It's highly and super cool thing. And then to make the thing interesting, then you'll indeed have your own human nature with the rules and your own nature. And then nature that you have is the thing that can, create life flow to be interesting. Because otherwise, if you had only these pieces that are just, the same rules there, then you would have a bunch of robots who only do the same thing and who are as if not alive at all. But this is, I find, complete stupidity and destruction of human beings. But for example, when you go into a monastery and you see there is like monks or nuns there, and they are doing the same thing all the time and keeping very quiet, then you might as well get an idea that these humans are just, walking zombies or something. But as we know, a life of a monk or a nun is actually pretty quiet life. It's pretty quiet life. So there is like a zombie walker, and this zombie walker has these rules and stuff that they keep in mind. But what they have as a place of contemplation is the stuff that they have around them, the little nature things and their own little funkiness there. So everybody has their own funkiness, and their own funkiness is something that makes them actually admire themselves and accept themselves and see themselves as unique and very much loved human beings. And this is super great, super duper great. Um, but if you fall into a victim as if you didn't have your own, anything to admire. If we take a monk, for example, again, a monk who is having these certain rules, then a monk can go back into the rules and even reading like one, two, or three or four rules, then automatically and instantly they will start to find their own conditioning around these rules. And they can, well, however small it is, they can find it. They can find some like idea about some rule or whatever it is, and that makes their human nature to flow again into some sort of a direction. And then they find that there is color in life. Color in life again. It's not only black and white, because in between the black thing and the white thing, there is the nice little filter that likes to talk about stuff, that likes to articulate or create art or there are all sorts of monks, to be honest. There are all sorts of monks. They're creating art, they're writing. Some of them only meditate days and weeks and years. And some of them don't talk at all. Some of them are like, according to society's ideas, they are deeply autistic and deeply this type of human beings who are like, out of society. But in actuality, they can be like very, very high meditation masters, and they don't really care if you or somebody else there calls them to be autistic or some other strange name. They would probably be just pretty amused by it, because they themselves know the world and themselves so well that they don't really need to feel as if being touched about it. So in the Buddhist philosophy, the thing that there is and I'm often thinking about Buddhist monks when I talk about these concepts. The thing that there is a thing called impersonality, which means that in the tight spot, you have only the tightness, and in the this spot you have only the lightness, and you don't take those things very personally. Because when you don't take these things very personally, then you find that you're not really suffering about it. You're not really seeing the world as a suffering place. And then you find out that whatever there is in the world, it's all pretty impersonal. It's impersonal and you don't really need to be touched by it. And what I like to point out is that the Buddhist monks are also, following a rule of not touching really, not touching like other human beings. I guess they can still touch each other if they want to, but not like in sexual ways, because they are also into celibacy. And this is also another thing that makes their own minds to be more at ease and not to worry about because when you're touching somebody, then you are in contact with them. when you're in contact with them, then things start to go crazy. Things then can go crazy. And I know it very well because I'm a human who likes to hug other humans. I like to hug humans. And I don't differentiate in like genders. I can hug and I can shake hands. I mean, although I've been living a life of a monk as well, a life of like my own monk, um, but and I've also been following a lot of the Buddhist monks' rules because I find them highly amusing and highly interesting things to follow. Um, but I haven't taken the Buddhist robe. Well, anyway, when I'm hugging human beings, then I understand also, how the energy of like hugging is for example influencing me. And when I'm hugging people who don't follow certain rules, or who haven't really been accommodating themselves in like what it's like to live as a monk or whatever. I mean, I used to live in a Buddhist monastery for 1 year, so that I know a little bit about it. And I like to point it out every now and then. I also pointed it out before in my videos. So and thought I will offer a talk about this subject as well, of like how the life was there. It was several years ago when I was there. But anyway, when I'm hugging like other human beings, then I can understand what is their conditioning about, and then I can see that my own conditioning can get touched about it, and when I'm wise, then I can also learn about it. Then I can also learn about what is it about, and because I haven't taken a single robe, this means that what is in my life is that I can actually go from like different tradition to different tradition and find out how the different conditionings there are through my own experience. And this is super interesting. Sometimes it's super difficult as well, because then I mean ultimately I end up as with the spirituality anyway. But when I get lost in one path and then I go to another and another, and all of these strange ideas that can very much differ in the communication, in their way of communication, then how they unite. This is usually somewhere in very much in like immaterial spheres where all sorts of spirits are living, and where there's just other beings who don't really mind, also who don't mind the thing called like this ism and that ism and another ism somewhere, but they also like to be alive, and then they remind me about it, and they remind me about these simple things like food and other stuff that we have in the planet Earth. And another thing, when I'm deeply in troubles, for example, what I like to do is I just like to go outside, and I like to, especially when there's sun outside, I like to go outside. I like to offer myself to the sun and let the sun basically just burn everything through me, because the sun is aware of everything. And then I just like to do this so the sun can purify me, and I can see where are my, strange false doings or mistakes or whatever I have done in my life and in my day and in my doing and in my conditioning. And then I find that it's very, very curing, very, very curing. For example, when you are drawing the Buddhist symbol is like this. It's like a plus and a cross and then a circle. Then the Buddhist symbol is also like the sun. It's like the sun, like a wheel of sun. And actually, it's got, you know, these 8 things there. They also got meanings there, like, right intention and right livelihood and right mindfulness and right concentration and 4 more. Well, anyway, there's 8 of them. I can't remember all of them. But in actuality, what I like to think about it then is that it's just the sun. It's just the sun, and the sun can never be incorrect. And when the sun is shining, then this is all that matters. We don't need to put these 4 or 8 things around us. We can just let ourselves be. Let ourselves be. And this is super cool discovery. This is just understanding that you're a human being, and that way you can accept yourself the way that you are. And when you accept yourself the way that you are, you also find out that it creates a lot of ease in your mind and in your heart. And when you're accepting yourself, then you also find that it is much easier to remember things. For example, when I'm right now thinking about a monk who is trying to um, explain their path to somebody who is interested in it. And when I think about it, what if a monk is actually, forgetting their path? What if a monk is forgetting their path? And I'm not having any bad intentions here, but I'm just thinking about it. And what if a monk creates like a lot of tension around forgetting their path? And what if they like would just let the path go and start doing something else instead of that? But they still have the monk robe. They still have the monk robe that they're wearing. And when they look into the sun, then the sun is letting them know what is their path again. And this is something that actually makes me really want to, take on the Buddhist robe. Because I feel like when I look into the sun can offer me anything I want. It can really offer me any information or whatever I want. For example, when I look at the sun, I can also communicate with other beings. I can send signals and messages outside into the world, and I highly believe that they are also received by somebody who I want to send them to. And then I find, like, the Buddhist path is actually so unimportant and so, well, basically just highly unimportant thing. Because when you look into the sun is again giving you anything and everything you need, everything you want. And then you're like having a robe and you call it like a Buddhist robe. And then you are stuck with the idea that you are a Buddhist monk and that you are a Buddhist and whatever it is that you are carrying there. But I am just having my green robe, my green hood really. It's a hood that I made myself and I really like it. I put a lot of effort into this thing. Um but I find it much more simple and much easier because I feel like I'm just following like Earth path or like a path of like forest or something like this. I don't need to explain to anybody that I have to be a Buddhist who, has to know everything, know the path, and remember all of these rules and remember all of the chants and all of these things. But I can just let myself be. But at the same time, when I'm finding myself like follow certain Buddhist rules, like certain monk rules or nun rules, to be correct with the gender there, then I also find that it's very, very interesting because I have time for it. I like solitary life and I like to explore life. But again, I can be in it. And then I'm attracting all sorts of Buddhist spirits and stuff. She's super likable. But I can also, stay in contact with human beings in a way that the monks and nuns cannot do because they have taken certain rules. And I'm not saying anything bad about it. I find it very, very, admirable and a big thing to do and take on your life. But I also feel like it's super cool to be able to not have these rules and to just jump out of it and do whatever I want. For example, go to a sauna with all sorts of genders, with different human beings, and not be touched or troubled by it at all. So it's just these funny little differences that I'm thinking about. And as I like to say, I like to think about Buddhism and how the Buddhist monks are living. It's just highly likable, highly amusing. Um, but anyway, to come back to this present day that we are having here, then I like to repeat to myself as well, because I know that when I talk to the camera, very often I just talk to myself and express to myself what it is that I'm feeling and doing. And I usually get highly motivated to do this for a long time, to just for a long time talk to myself. Because I also understand that there is human beings who like what I'm talking about. There's even one Buddhist monk who is very much liking my content and leaving me a lot of comments actually. It's very nice. He also has a very interesting channel that I like to point out. Um, and I will probably leave it down in the description because he's super interesting human beings and also making content of his life and traveling and he's like a forest monk. He lives mostly in the forest. And there's other beings, other people who are following my stuff, and I've been mostly getting very good feedback, which is super cool. Which also motivates me to be more open and just innocent in my speech, very innocent in my speech. Yeah. So when I come back to this present moment here, then what I want to think about is that I'm actually super grateful that I can stay in the village where I'm at. I'm super duper grateful that there is these two loving human beings called Melissa and Matthew, who are whose farm I am at and living in this caravan, and who have been feeding me with vegetables and rice and bread, and that I'm just doing super duper okayly, super duper okayly, and I feel like I don't have a lot of things to say anymore. But I have to keep my promise of creating this thing, creating these chronicles. Because from the time when I was young, I very much had this desire to um, basically to create my life story, because I thought my life story will be highly amusing and highly interesting, and I also wanted to save it so that other humans can see what my life is about. And when I think about it, because I've been doing it for a while now, I started this channel a year and a half ago, and I've taken a lot of content down because some later times I thought it's like super embarrassing. Right now, what I feel like is that I'm not gonna take these things down because it's my life and my life is about learning. And it's nice to create chronicles that are honest. It's nice to create these chronicles. It's also something that motivates me to keep on going. And when I'm keeping myself on going, then I find that I'm motivating my own spirit to keep it positive and nice and well. And I really suggest you the same. I suggest you also to do the things that you have thought of doing. Because when you're not doing the things that you have thought of doing, then you're probably making yourself not want to do them anymore. And then you're finding out that you might end up a little bit of suffering, that you might just end up in a place of suffering, especially when you make yourself some promises that you thought you would be doing. And then when you're not following them, then you find out that you really are suffering. And then it's much harder to do them. For example, with creating these videos. When I really think and feel that I need to make one, but I'm, for example, in a place of working with somebody else, so I just cannot make myself free from it. Or when I'm finding any other excuse, for example, that I don't have good lightning, or that something that somebody is on my way, or whatever they are, then I also find that I get very disappointed and depressed because of this. That I'm not making them, I'm not creating them. And then I fall into the tendency of again creating it, a tension point inside me. A tension point inside me. And then when I realize that, it's not only about this having this tension inside me, but it's also about expressing myself as freely and as nicely as I actually like. And I don't have the conditions to do it, then it's super hard and super bad. Especially when I know that I need to do something, but I can't do it. It's like building a jail around you. And again, as I like to say when I'm talking about myself, then I find that you can probably also relate to it with your own being and find these things that I'm discussing to be pretty much universally true. So that you can also understand that when other times when I'm talking about you, then I'm also actually talking about myself. Because the way that we are is that we like to project ourselves into the world. When it's me, then it can also be you. And when it's you, it can also be me. But ultimately, what we have is our own doing and our own being, which means that the thing that we're doing is about us, which is ultimately about, you or us there in whatever end we are. It's like the same concept that I was explaining before. Just like this point here and this point here, and these 2 points uniting and creating something. But ultimately, as one of my friends who I also met in one of the monasteries was pointing out, ultimately it's just about, playing ping pong. It's like ping pong. You're just sending ideas from one place to another. And then if you're having the game going well, then it's really just understanding that it is the way that it is. That there is always your own ideas and the receiver of your ideas. And the receiver of your ideas is also having ideas. And they can also send the ping pong ball back to you. And this is pretty cool discovery. This is very good discovery. But for example, when you think about football, and you have like a lot of players there, and they even have different roles there. But anyway, they're all about, getting a point to their own basket there. And then they're like team players, and they're after the same ball, and the same ball is like the same idea. And then these footballers are very, very fast. They're playing with the same ball. And then the ball goes to different places. They add their own ideas to there. And finally, the ball is like, getting like pretty, you know, conceptually pretty overwhelmed from all of these ideas, because it's like trying to put them into one place where there already is a lot of stuff going on. And then ball, I mean, the ball actually isn't alive, but what if it was alive? If you talk about it in concepts, and the ball, then it has so much of the ideas, and then finally it has to end up in the basket as well. And then, for example, when the ball basically, like, turns into like a contemplator, or like a Buddhist monk, or a monk, or just a monk, and just sitting in the basket, and then it has like all of these thousands ideas to contemplate. And then the ball is probably like super overwhelmed, so that you actually, I don't know, footballers are usually not thinking about these things, but what if there is like somebody who goes into the basket and finds out like what is the ball there, what is it doing, and what it actually needs. Does it need to get some like air out of it, or does it need like more air inside, or what is the ball doing? What does it need? And what if there was like an expert like this? Then that would be also pretty interesting. I feel like I could basically put it all into like a idea of like what would a monk do in this case and that case and all of these other cases. In which case I would be the one who do, invent a monk's rule book. But I'm not going there. Not going there, because I guess they would get pretty angry at me. Um. So these are the ideas that I'm having today, and that I hope that all of these ideas have been kind of offering you as well something to think about, and another view about the universe, about life on Earth, and about what is going on. And what is going on is usually super interesting if you make it super interesting. But I feel like right now I'm pretty happy to stop this talk and to just send you a suggestion to do something good for yourself and to have a good time, as I would do myself. Um, and I really hope that my next talk will be more interesting and more enlightening, because I feel like right now I'm still in the um, transition phase from being with another human being to being alone on my own again. And I feel already it has been like 7 or 8 hours without him, without this other guy. And I already feel a big relief, but I am also feeling like a football that is taking the air inside, as I'm offering this caravan a little bit of air cleansing. Um, and I feel a lot better, a lot freer. And usually, what happens is that I also get better and more interesting thought flows running. And right now, what I have is a lot of projects that I need to be doing, a lot of things that I promised myself to do. Projects where I have to make crochet stuff and and writings and drawings and poetry and all of these things that I'm doing. So I leave it there, and I send you all sorts of well wishes, and see you next time.